Elayne Boolser, so good to see you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to see you. This is more than I've been drawing lately. That's great. It's the biggest crowd I've had in a while.
Chris, I was looking for the plug sheet because we're selling stuff here.
We are? Yay.
You are coming out with somewhat of a box set, right?
Yes, and I just want to point out another magnificent comedian who's here, my friend Michelle Ballin, who's...
Yes!
She's not doing well.
Oh no, I couldn't get any transportation over from Javits, so she texted, "I'm here." I said, well, "Good, go on," because I'm not here. I'm not going to get there. Oh.
So, Timeless is the name of this, and this is your specials plus a new album.
Yes, it's 4 of the specials, which really changed everything because there had never been a single young woman trying to be attractive and smart and political and sexy. You know, it's why I didn't get, I may not get there with you, but it's true. They say don't be first, and it's true. Yeah. There's no Medgar Evers Day. There is a Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I am Medgar Evers, and I don't mean to minimize, obviously, the civil rights struggle, God forbid, but first is first, and it was, it still is tough, but, so I was looking at the specials, and the first one I had to do myself, Party of One, which, amazing special.
You produced that yourself?
I paid for it. I tried for 2 years to get a cable special, and it was Showtime and HBO in those days, and I had been on the road for 12 years by then. I started at 19 in New York in 1973. I'll be 66 this week. So, don't clap. You're alive! Don't clap. But if you have a hard candy and a tissue, I would appreciate. So 12 years of literally, I used to do 2.5 hours in those days. All my yellowed reviews on the website say, this is the best and longest show we've ever had. 2.5 hours, 50 weeks a year on the road, 12 years, and I would go to Showtime and HBO, and they go, no one wants to see a woman do an hour. And I'd say, really? Because I get a lot of money for that.
Right.
Well, it wasn't a lot then, but, and now it's nothing. But it's all they said for 2 years. And I was freaking out. All the guys already were on their second specials, and when I would go to clubs, they'd go, oh, thank God you're here. Now we're going to make money back this week. And the guys with the specials had been in the week before, sold nothing, and I was going to quit because it was so personal against women, and I was the woman.
Right, there wasn't like a lot of women who weren't getting specials. It was you.
No, I wasn't. And, we're sorry. Yeah, you are sorry. So anyway, I met a guy who had just finished shooting some movies. He was a director of photography, a director. I mean, I'm not Barbra Streisand. He wasn't a hairdresser. I didn't make him my producer. I met him in Paris. I was doing TV over there, and he had just finished shooting Reuben in Germany. And anyway, we met, and he said, I'll do this for you in New York. How much money do you have saved? 12 years on the road. I said, I have exactly $9,000 in the bank. He said, we'll do it. And it became Party of One. And we had Letterman on, who was huge at that moment. He had just started the nighttime show, and he did the opening and had never stepped outside his show. Bill Cosby, pardon the expression, was the... Nothing to tell. What am I, chopped liver? I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
I spent so much time with this guy alone for years. Nothing. Chopped liver. Oh, my God. Anyway, his show became #1 that week. He said, I'll do it. So we had the greatest opening. Dr. Ruth, it was her first big year. Brother Theodore, the hippest, from the Village on Letterman. And it was just so cool. It was such a great opening. And then an act that had been honed for 12 years, the most gorgeous. Oh, my good friend Tom Waits gave me the music, new coat of paint. Okay. And I kept saying to my boyfriend who did this, Steve Gerbson, who deserves to be known, I said, they hate me. And he said, you're crazy. I said, okay. We put the show together. Now, the way we did it for $9,000 was because he was so well known in New York in the film business. He went to everyone and said, look, we could pay you a little bit of money today, or we could pay you your full fee when this sells. And they all said, oh, Elayne Boolser, it's going to sell. Yeah, we'll take our full fee. So, of course, we take this magnificent show back to Stu Smiley at Showtime and HBO, and they say, nah. And finally, my boyfriend said, oh, you're right. That's personal. How do you turn down Cosby and Letterman and Dr. So I put it on the shelf for a year. It was, anyone under 50 won't know this reference, but I had the Duddy Kravitz bar mitzvah film in my living room. Look it up. It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And he said, what do you want to do now? I said, I want to retire, from this crap after 13. They're never going to buy me. And he said, well, we'll go up to San Francisco. I'll teach film and you'll make wind chimes, whatever. So, so it was a year of, that rejection on that shelf. That film was beyond anything. Knowing every day, well, they hate you. I know. Shut up there. And after a year went by, we always, the great saying is if someone in TV doesn't like you, wait 5 minutes because they all keep turning. They're all gone. We're still here, right? So, but it was more like a year. Anyway, I feel like I took your show from you.
No. I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving this.
I thought 2 more minutes, he's just going to get up and leave,
No, I don't need to be here. I'll be here next week. Don't worry.
You're an amazing catalyst. I can't do this without you. So a year goes by, new young hip guys come into Showtime. Peter Chernin, who went on to take over the world, if you look his name up. And of course they bought the show, and it was Party of One. That show bought me 2 and 2 on the Hudson River, magnificent, huge house in Hollywood. And that was the one show. And the thing that we did a year and a half later, we wrote checks that came out to $129,000 and sent them to everyone. And everyone called us and said, we've never gotten paid on the back end by anyone. Right. And we said, well, we pay. And we paid everyone, which was so wonderful. That show ran for 12 years. After Showtime was done, licensing. Then Lifetime showed it every 15 minutes for 5 years, and that's why they call it Lifetime. And then, Peter Chernin gave me 3 more specials, and actually 5, but we only have 4 in the set right now. And the interesting thing is that the only reason I can release all my shows is the reason I own my shows is because nobody wanted me. I mean, in those days, all those guys who did their shows, all those famous guys, they don't have shows to sell. The HBO owns those shows, Showtime. Nobody wanted me. I licensed the shows to them. And then later on, when they said, well, we'll let you do specials, I said, yeah, great. I'm producing them. You can license them. So I own everything.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah. Well, that's the way the suits were, but how were your peers? How were your comedy peers at that time?
It was so, it's the only reason I was able to continue with so much negativity from the business. The audience is always ahead, right, Michelle? Mm-hmm. The audience is always ahead of business. And the day I stepped on stage, not knowing anything, the first minute in 1972, 73, and opened my mouth, it was like, wow, people were so happy. They were so delighted to see a woman that they didn't have to go, oh, stop doing that to yourself, Mm-hmm. It was so great. And my peers were incredible because it was such rarefied air in those days. Now there are a billion comedians, and I know they throw one in your backseat if you fill up at a gas station. There, have a comment. Yeah. Oh, God. But it was, my group in the 70s in New York, it was, oh, gosh, well, of course, the amazing Andy Kaufman, Ed Bluestone, Freddie Prinze, Jimmy Walker, Richard Belzer, Richard Lewis, Larry David, that was us. And then Richard Pryor was, of course, ahead of us, but he came in a lot, and Bette Midler and Lily. So it was a beautiful group, and Robert Klein and Brenner. And what was great about it was there was no money in comedy unless you were the biggest star in the world. So now you can make a living just doing clubs, which is great. Enjoy. But for us, you were no one. We all had day jobs. Everyone had a day job in that group.
And this was all at the Improv at the time?
Yes, that's all there was at the beginning in New York. I mean, there was the duplex and the downstairs and, some village clubs and a lot of folk music and some comedy. But for this, the Improv was that. And I was the hostess. I had the best 2 in New York. and I was so afraid they were going to go out of business because it literally was like being a beatnik,
Right.
Nobody came. What was stand-up? Nobody knew anything. And I had been fired from so many waitress jobs. Oh, God. Remember they had all the days? I was fired from every day of the week in New York City. Fridays, Thursdays. I said, oh, my God, if they had months, I would have been fired 12 more times, you know. So I was just the worst waitress. People would get escargot, and they'd be waiting so long, I'd forget the clippers, and I'd get back, and they had made jewelry out of the shells already, you know. So they said, okay, you can be the hostess. Don't carry anything anywhere. You're awful. Okay. So I was the hostess. But the great thing, why I got good fast, accidentally was... there was no scheduling in those days because there were so few comics. So if you showed up, you went on. So Jay Leno, and Jay used to drive in from Boston. Right. So he would come in and say to Bud, I need an hour tonight. And Bud would say, go ahead. And we'd all go, oh, well, we get to go eat now. But then he got great. Yeah. So you watch people become who they're going to be. And he's one of the greatest club comics and a horrible human being. Okay. So...
Now, did you know that?
You can't hurt me anymore.
Yeah. Did you know that then, or did it take
a little bit? We all knew a little bit, but but nothing like this. Nothing like this. Anyway, I mean, have you ever heard of a 22-year span in the Tonight Show where a comedy star wasn't broken out?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of effort to keep comedy down for 22 years.
Well, why do you think that was?
He needs to be the last man standing. We all know that.
Yeah. So he just didn't want anybody on that show.
Should I speak up for the record, or can they see me agreeing with you on radio? Yeah. So whatever time you needed, you came in. Well, what would happen in the winter? I had to be there. I was the hostess. And I emceed because Bud would come in later. But I would show up on a snowy Tuesday, you know, snow pounding down. Well, no one came. Richard Lewis didn't come. You know, they're not going to come. So everybody would go, start the show. Okay. So I'd be up there for hours. I mean, there was no one to put on.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a bit, literally, there'd be like 8 Japanese tourists who didn't speak English, you know, and I would just be there talking. And I remember one night there was an empty wine bottle on the front table and there was no one but me, and I picked it up and I did a drunk Statue of Liberty, which became like my great closing piece for 2 years. In a year I was on TV. It's unheard of because I was on for hours every week.
But did that set up that you had that conversational style because you couldn't do 2 hours of jokes and gags, right?
Well, I wasn't a comedian. I didn't know what that was. So I had no backlog of material. It was just talking to people. And, you know, and of course, my boyfriend was Andy Kaufman. And I went there as a waitress, and they would put the waitresses on in between the comics so people would have a chance to talk, you know. So we'd sing so they could talk. So we were grout. So I was, you know, I thought, well, I'll just sing. And I would do like a 12-minute version, my first song, of Van Morrison's Moon Dance, that literally people would ask me for butter in the middle. Like I'd be up there on my 18th verse, you know, the night's magic seemed to, and Bud would yell, thank you. Bill Siddons, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. So I would be in my 8th chorus of Moondance, and Bud Friedman would yell from the lobby, seat these 2 on table 59 and 58 needs butter. Okay, you know the white's magic. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. And Andy and I, like, boom, it was instant. So he would come in later, he'd never seen me sing. And I was so excited, well, I'm singing. You know, what am I singing? So he finally came in one night, I said, I didn't sing yet, you're going to see me sing. I was so excited. So I went up and did my 3 songs, and I came off, and he was just looking down. And I said, well, and he didn't look up. He said, oh, Elayne, you know when something's so terrible, you have to look down? I said, well, what do you mean? He said, you must never do that in public again.
So that was you guys were dating and both doing the improv?
Well, yeah, I was the hostess and the singer until he banned me. And then one night, and this is a true story. I know it sounds like the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel,
right,
but I did it first. So, I got pretty sharp there because I was getting, spritzed at by all the guys all night. They'd have to go by me, and there's an Ed Bluestone. Do you know who he was?
Yes.
Well, he was one of the greatest writers, and he's still alive. He's a wonderful guy, but he won't come out. So, let's have lunch. No, remember me as I was. What are you talking about? We're comics. We were never good looking. Come out to lunch. So, greatest writer National Lampoon ever had, and he did the very famous best-selling issue of all time. It was a dog on the cover with a gun at the dog's head and his eyes looking at the gun, and it said, "If you don't buy this magazine, we'll kill this dog." And the brilliance of that cover was that there was no Photoshop, so they really had to get the dog to look that way. It was a long shoot. So he was so brilliant, but he was such a, I will say, curmudgeon is the word. And I remember I was so afraid of him, and one night he walks by me and I say, "And how are you tonight?" And he says, "My personal life is none of your fucking business." So I got pretty funny back. Yeah. And anyway, one night it was about, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had done my 3 songs, and that's all I knew. And I was prohibited from learning more, so I only had my 3. And Bud, who would, sell his mother for a nickel, said, "Well, there's still 3 tourists in there. I think they're from Turkey. Just go up and sing again." I said, "I'm not going to sing the same 3 songs." And he said, "Well, go up and talk. You're amusing." So I said, "Yeah, you know why I'll go up and talk? To get away from you." So I go on stage, and I'm not even thinking, and it's not an exaggeration. I have witnesses. I talk for an hour. I talk from 1 to 2 o'clock in the morning without stopping. And in the middle of it, I know this is going to sound terrible, but it's actually a great story for its time. In the middle of it, all the guys had started coming back in from their gigs, and they're seeing this happen. And at some point, maybe about halfway through, Freddie Prinze, Richard Belzer, and a wonderful half of a comedy team, Tom Curley. Edmonds and Curley were the biggest college act on earth in those days. Tom Curley, great friend, Freddie Prinze, Richard Belzer, they're all in their suits from their gigs. They come up with their back to the audience, and while I'm talking, and please don't think it's terrible because it was great, they mime peeing on me because I was so good. And I got it, and even then I said, "Oh, it must be the small hours of the morning." And they just went, "Ah." So I did my other half hour. I walk off, and it was like after a shootout on Main Street, they all just parted as I walked back down the aisle. They went, "Do you realize what you just did?" And I said, "No." And they said, "Do you know how hard that?" I said, "Please." It's because I had been forced into ballet, and my singing was bad. Everything was hard, and I wasn't good at anything. And this was like nothing. And they said, "You don't understand how good that was." I said, "You're right. I don't. That's nothing." And they went, "That's it. You're not saying that's it." And then when I started to care about it, that's when you bomb for 5 years in a row.
Right.
But the reason I was conversational because of Andy. Once I started to think about it, of course I stiffened up. And Andy came in one night. He said, "You got to. You're using a fourth wall now, and it's just not warm." He said, "You know what? You're always chewing gum. Why don't you take some packs of gum on with you, offer it to the audience, walk out, walk around, and talk to him?" And that's what he made me do, and that's what did it. So it was great.
So he was watching every night or every once in a while?
Well, we were both there every night. It just depended on how the timing worked out. And then Catch a Rising Star opened, and even Bud Friedman says the greatest thing that ever happened to the Improv was Catch opening, because the Improv was truly going out of business. But when Catch opened, Rick Newman, what a wonderful guy.
Yes.
And that's pretty rare to say about most club owners. So he was so into selling comedy and getting established that he really sold it with a publicist, and people started to see comedy as a thing. And so then they would see the Improv too. And we, our business just went through the roof because of Catch. So there was a lot of places to work a lot, and we all watched each other. I'm drinking into your microphone.
That's okay.
Diet Coke.
At a certain point, though, you went to L.A. Was there a reason for that, or did that kind of happen a little bit at a time?
I don't know. Can anyone afford to live in New York? I went to L.A. because that's kind of, in those days, as I said, you were completely broke or the biggest star in the world. One Tonight Show would change your life because, 12 channels, almost no cable. And if there were, they didn't even have a Showtime on the dial in New York. HBO crowded them out in the early days. So you would go to California, try and get the Tonight Show, and you had to get seen out there. They weren't coming to you. And if you got the Tonight Show, then you could have a life on the road. But literally, you were in the free couple of clubs. And then if you got made, you either had a TV show, which happened to Freddie after One Tonight Show, Jimmy Walker after One Tonight Show, Gabe Kaplan after One Tonight Show, a bunch of people.
And these are all friends of yours that you see, their lives change.
Oh, instantly. Yeah. I'm going to burp. That's the beauty of Diet Coke.
Yes.
All done. So you'd go out to California. I went out because I got like a TV show that summer from my first year. They always had summer replacement shows instead of reruns. Yeah. So it was some summer replacement show, and I got on in a minute because I had been filling in hours. Went out to L.A., did that, came back. But I didn't just, I was back and forth my whole life, and I still am. I live here, and I live there. I've been, both places forever. And but then I spent more time there just because you got more work there. But then I was on the road 50 weeks a year for 20 years. So I actually didn't live anywhere for about 20 years. I had a friend's apartment in New York that I kept some things in. I didn't have a key to anywhere for 20 years.
Were you working the Improv when you were there, or were you working the store?
Oh, I did. The beauty of not being wanted is you're totally free. I'd go to the store and she goes, if you work here, you can't work anywhere else. I go, hon, nobody ever wanted me. I'm going exactly where I want to go. You don't want me? Fine. Oh, no, please come back. So I worked. Then Mitzi opened the belly room. The women are going upstairs. I said, I'm not even going to look at it. I don't care what's upstairs. I'm working down here. Okay. Just leave me alone. It's just ridiculous. So.
Well, there's this show on TV now, which is I'm Dying Up Here. And a lot of people claim that one of the characters is somewhat based on you. Do you see it that way? Or?
Well, they keep saying my name, so I kind of got the feeling it might be me.
Yeah.
And then every time I watch it with Bill, I go, that's my shirt. I had that shirt.
Well, they certainly go for the hair.
That's my shirt. That's my hair. That's my nose. But that is not my act. And she does not have the spirit. I was very angry at the last episode because she caved.
Yes.
And I thought, well, they sure jumped the shark on that one. The interesting thing about the book, I'm Dying Up Here, very nice guy who wrote it, Bill Nettleceder. He was a reporter for the LA Times. So it's amazing how much he got wrong. And so I tell you, take your news reading with a big grain of salt because they always screw it up. Not just wrong about me, but the mise en scène, the overall is, of course, right. But every detail of every comment, there's so much wrong in there. Diane Nichols, fantastic comedian. We had a drinking game one night. She came over, and after like the first chapter, we fell off our chairs. We went, well, we're done. That's how many mistakes in the first chapter. We couldn't even breathe. We drank so much. So just so much wrong in the book. But the overall was correct. And so, what can you do? Nothing's ever quite.
But when you watch it, it doesn't seem as enjoyable as thinking of your life with all these crazy people that you were with at the time.
It's just very interesting that anyone who sees his or her own profession on TV or in a movie is never going to think it's good. Yeah. My husband's in the music business. Vinyl came on 2 years. He threw up in the living room. So,
well, he was also telling me before we started he doesn't read the Doors books.
My husband started out managing the Doors in the 60s, and he's still cute, isn't he?
Yes.
Yay! And he's managed everyone on Earth, everyone since then. Not me, but
do you think it was helpful that he had to handle Jim Morrison before he came into your life?
Yes, I do. I certainly do. It's funny. As I said, all the men in the business hated my guts.
Yeah.
I think just the fact that I'm not, look, I was sexy and young and skinny and cute. And I think it was the first time that, like blood went to two places in them at the same time, like, down below and to their brains. And they went, oh, I'm going to faint. I hate her. So those guys just, it was the old guard of not wanting things to change. And Carson was the worst of all. We've had to wait till he's been dead 10 years just so we could say it. He'll come out and kill us still. What the worst man who ever lived. So yes, he had Jim Morrison and me, and guys would say to him, oh, how can you be with Elayne Boolser? You go, something? My entire career, all I've done is search for my act 10 minutes before the show and pull the needle out of their arm. All she needs is a piece of cheesecake.
But Carson was not open to having you.
Carson was the most powerful man in America, more so than the president. He could destroy the president if he wanted to. There was no one else to watch. He was the arbiter of everything, politics, society, norms, mores, everything. And he hated so many kinds of people. He didn't like black people. He didn't like fat people. He didn't like fat women. So most of the singers I hear, because I don't want to get sued, had to sleep with him to be on the show. Me and people go, well, he loved Joan Rivers. And I say, do you understand why? Thank God she was so funny. So that's wonderful and, great. But she was the epitome, because those were the years. Nothing against her at all. The epitome of what those kind of men saw women as at the time. You were either just a blow-up doll for sex, or the grasping, get the jewelry, I hate sex, loudmouth woman. Mm-hmm. That was it, and she did not challenge his view of what women are. And, God bless her. I mean, she's wonderful. But when it came to me, coming on at 22 years old with my little tushy and, my off the shoulder, and it's like, well, sex is great. Oh, get her out of here. So it was a horror show, and it went on for years. And, and I have a book coming out next year called Big Fun. And here's the good part of that about the book. Nothing is complaining. It's not, oh, poor me. We're not in Syria. I think of that every day. It's just the funny stories from what I call the second golden age of comedy, which was the 70s. And it's just the funny stories. And even the Carson things told in a funny way. So it's fine.
Yeah.
But you'll know the truth, but it'll be funny and entertaining. There's no whining. It's not an autobiography. It actually starts like this. Chapter 1, childhood. It was bad. Chapter 2, 1973. That's the beginning of the book.
Yeah,
So, we all had our childhoods. Yeah. You don't need to worry about mine. It's all just great stories. And because I was the host of 7 nights a week for 3 years, I know everything that happened, and nobody knows these great, funny stories. So it's going to be a good book.
Well, that's the amazing thing is like your entire times was such exceptional times. Yes, your career is great.
They were great times in comedy.
Everything that was happening around you was really fun and cool.
And then remember when I went out to L.A. to, live most of the time in 76. So who was my group then? Letterman, Robin. So many. Who are we? Marsha Warfield, magnificent, and Shirley Hempel. Oh, I miss her so much. She was amazing. God, she bought Led Zeppelin's house, and they had an Olympic pool. And she, I'm not going to that pool. I said, well, I am. So, I went over and did my laps. I tried to teach her how to swim, but she was impossible. But she was so darn funny. So it was this other amazing group of, Steve Landisberg, and I'm blanking out on the names because I'm old and I didn't eat yet. But
this was great. Before Robin even broke out, right? That you knew.
Well,
Robin.
very interesting. After I Andy lived with me in the Village, 299 West 12th Street. I go by there a lot. It's just the most beautiful 2.5 years of my life until I met Mr. Siddons. So I had a love of my life for like 30 years until this second love of my life. Sometimes you get another shot. We got married in my 50s, his 80s. So,
but everybody thinks. I mean, you're saying that it was so great with Andy. Everyone always has this perception of him as if he was insane.
Well, let's go back to talking about the book and the TV show of I'm Dying Up Here. Yeah. No one has been more ill-served in legacy than Mr. Kaufman, and it breaks my heart. His family was just not equipped to control, the legacy. I mean, the Doors are well taken care of, as well as many other people, and Bill handles some other estates as well. Not the Doors, but other estates. But he's friends with the Doors guy, and, we keep each other honest and, in the know of what's going on and what's positive and negative. Andy, no one took care of him, and I tried hard because by then I was producing all my specials and I had a full staff and I wanted to, tell it right. And of course, his father, old school, oh, you're just a little girl. And I said, and so I never got to do it. And everyone just took over. There were a couple of, I will use the term, maybe I won't.
Decided not
what are
to.
the birds that pick your bones?
Vultures, yeah.
Thank you, young audience. There are a couple of vultures who, since Andy died on May 16th, 1984, simply make a living off of Andy's bones. And I won't even dignify them by telling you the two names, but they just constantly keep making up new books and new stories and new events and new garbage just to keep selling things and buying new houses or whatever. So as I say to anyone who loves someone's work or thinks they love someone, just go to the source. Go to YouTube, go to just go watch Andy. Forget the maelstrom of crap that's an industry around him that benefits no one, least of all Andy, and just go look at his work. He was the most magnificent human being next to Mr. Siddons that I've ever known. And, they have a lot in common in my book because there's a very kind, I grew up in Brooklyn, right? Sheepshead Bay, Coney Island. I'm tough. I mean, Bill has what Andy has. There's such a kindness in them. In fact, God bless you, Michelle. Michelle Ballin, ladies and gentlemen, go see her.
She's great.
If you, the only hard part of my marriage is that he's so kind. You can't gossip with this guy. You can't say anything. If you said Hitler, he'd go, the Volkswagen was brilliant. He will not say a bad word. For a New York Jew, it's very difficult to live with that guy. But, Andy had a beautiful innocence about him that there was an innocence. He called himself a children's entertainer. And he would say, do not say comedian. I won't come up. You say I'm a song and dance man, Andy Kaufman. So I remember I was learning like every second from him. And I said, do you mean if they say, please welcome comedian Andy Kaufman? I said, why? He said, because then they have pressure on them. They're forced to laugh. I say, oh, good. I'm going to make them say comedian every single time before I go up. So, he was.
I remember that thing that you guys did where you were on
the chair.
Yeah, his show where his chair was so high.
20 feet high.
That was like the first cringe comedy type thing that I think I had ever seen. Larry Sanders' show started after that. But, I mean, if you ever want to see something that...
You need to be uncomfortable for a few minutes?
It is. It's very uncomfortable. But you guys were playing that at a time that nobody had done that bit.
Nobody. That was the
before.
last show he did before he died. We wrote it together. It was called Soundstage, Andy Kaufman on PBS. If you want to see this bit, it's on YouTube. I think it just says Andy Kaufman interviews his ex-girlfriend. What's lovely for me is I was already in the Writers Guild by then. So they said, well, you have to write it with Andy, but we don't have money, so we can't give you the writer's credit. We'll just say creative consultant or whatever. I said, I don't care, whatever. So you'll see, there's so much haters on the internet, and they love to kill you. And they go, look at that. He really told his bitch where to go. And I'm going, do you not understand? I wrote this, you fucking moron.
But where did that come from? Where did that, let's look at this?
That came from Andy because we used to talk about, I did Letterman so many times in those early years. Thank goodness for him. What a great guy for that. And always people talked a lot about that Letterman's chair more than any other host was so much higher. And then Andy went, well, don't you think it should really be higher? So we made it like 10, 20 feet high. But then I wanted to put the cup of water on his desk and have to stand on the chair to take the sip. And we fought for a week because he said, look, it's not going to be subtle enough, because he was very subtle. And I'm not. I'm Kenny Youngman. I'm an old school stand-up. I know that. I love being a Henny Young. People go, what's your comedy like? I go, funny, punchlines, funny, So he said, you won't be subtle enough. I know it's not going to be subtle. I said, I had to promise him for a week. I promise it'll be subtle. I'm not going to. And he trusted me, and it was subtle, and it really worked. It was so funny. It was great. So, that was a good one.
That is an amazing piece of work, and
that whole show was good.
Yeah, it was really, really funny.
He was wonderful.
But you said, but he wasn't as crazy as in the Jim Carrey thing.
God, no. He was. First of all, he was the most fun you could ever have. He was he was like a child. There was so much goodness, so much innocence, so much. Here's the thing that people don't understand. His brother was doing the Andy Kaufman Awards every year, so I went and did it for him like 3 years ago at UCB in the Village. And everyone who wanted the award, they were like coming up in their underwear, like hitting themselves, smearing cooked chicken in their genitals. And I go, no one understands what he was. First of all, the subtlety was amazing. And it literally was, to me, he was a roller coaster. If you go on the Cyclone at Coney Island, you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing? Oh my God, it's good. What are we crazy? And then he goes, ah! And then the minute it lands, you go, we want to ride again. We want to ride again.
Yeah.
There's such a joy at the end. So to me, like Sacha Baron Cohen, who does an amazing, amazing lifetime of work, and I love it, but it's not Andy because there's no joy at the end. There's no, with Andy, you go, okay, well, I'm on this ride. Oh. And it's like I would stand in the back in those years in the 70s, and I had never seen anyone do this to an audience. Hey, Diet Coke. Burp. Anyway, I'd stand in the back, and literally, if someone came in when he got off, you go, okay, what did these people just go through? I don't know. Tug of war? What? They would be soaked. They'd be like laying on the tables. They'd be flushed. The joy, it was every human emotion, and then you'd end in joy. He never didn't end it in joy. And that's the difference with what goes on now. It's just gotcha and ha and screw you, and nobody's ending it with joy. And I miss that part.
Sure.
But only he knew how. I have never seen anybody work like that.
And this is what the book is going to be about these kind
There's
of...
an awful lot of Andy in the book because I have the stories that have never been told.
Yeah.
And they're all, you'll just love him more and more. When he died, I didn't know what to do with my grief. I just didn't know where to put it. And then I just sat down on this old typewriter and started typing my story with Andy. And I think it took a long time. And by then, every article had come out in every major newspaper and magazine. Everyone had done his or her tribute. And I loved it because, like, a couple of months before Andy died, Mary Lou Henner was on Letterman going, I hate that guy. I hate him. He doesn't rehearse. He's not a real actor. And then he dies. And you go, oh, by Mary Lou Henner. Oh, Andy. I went, oh, you. It's just everyone got their name in print. And so all the papers had their articles. And I wasn't thinking of anything except just getting my grief on paper and telling the good part. Because I didn't think any of those things got him right. It was all people who didn't get it. So there's me, little me, no manager, no agent. Remember, that's 1984. I started in 72. Still nobody would handle me because they didn't want me. And I used to get full dressed, full makeup, walk into a different little room in my apartment and start making the phone calls to book me. That's what you do. I mean, forget it. And to hear what people say about you to you, it's just...
that's not the feedback you're always looking for.
No, I'm telling you, it takes, people now on the internet, they go, oh, they're so mean. I go, honey, this is nothing. This used to happen face to face. But anyway, so I got my little article done, and I just, looked up addresses in the yellow pages. And so I sent a little envelope to the New Yorker and to New York and to the Village Voice, and I think probably to Screw and to Esquire, and sent them all out. And I got just lovely letters back. Gosh, we love this. It's beautiful, but we've done our Andy piece. And Esquire said, we have a piece going. Phil Berger's writing it. We're paying him a kill fee. We want this piece. And the piece came out, and literally it's the most letters, snail mail, because that's all we had, I ever got in my life. And the nicest thing that I took from it, which is going to enhance the book, is I finally understand this guy, but you didn't give away his secrets, and now I love him too. And that's what the book is. I'm not giving it away, but you're going to see why he was so, and it's so enjoyable, all of it. So I think you'll like it. Can I tell you one funny thing about selling the first special?
Love to.
So you know how, like, you know what you would hope someone would say about you in life, in anything. Like when the special finally sold and they called me in and they said, and you're getting 3 more. And I thought, oh my God. So you got it, right? What was it? You went, why isn't this, this should be, these men. And I said, so what, what was the conversation? What did you say about me? What did the work say to you? And no, it wasn't Peter Turner. It was Alan Sabinson, another wonderful executive, young, hip guy, came in. He said, well, I took it home and, had a pile of specials. There was people trying to sell this. And my wife was sitting on the couch reading, and I'm throwing them in one by one. And then yours comes on, and she stops reading, and she looks up, and she says, so, did you buy this yet? And I said, no, I didn't. And she said, schmuck! Yay, women for women!
So that changed everything when that special got on for you? You suddenly were working...
No, the Tonight Show, when I finally got on, thanks to Helen Reddy guest hosting, not Johnny Carson.
Right.
Helen Reddy, what a feminist. I love her to this day. And I've been visiting her at the Actors Home in Hollywood, which is a great... I'm going now. It's fabulous. The swimming pools and movie stars, black gold coming out of... Yeah, so I still go see her, and she's amazing. And here's a great story. I'll make it quick, because I know it's your show, but nobody would know that I know that. You usually tell me if I should slow down.
You go ahead and tell every story you got. I love them.
So I couldn't get the Tonight Show for love or money, nothing. And I was again stymied at one level because I'm just playing the same club, same money over and over and over again. How do you start to make money? How do you move up? You can't break through. You just can't. Without the Tonight Show in those days, there was nothing else. So the LA Times decides they're going to do the usual female comedian article. I can't wait till they do black midgets under, you're my favorite black midget comedian. Oh, thank you. Do you like me in the regular? You learn how to answer those things. You're my favorite. You're one of the best female comedians. I say, I'm also one of the top 5 male comedians. Did you know that? Anyway, so the LA Times does an article, female comedians. Who is it? It's Joan Rivers, Phyllis Diller, who was the kindest woman in the world and was so good to me and everyone, male or female, in comedy. Joan Rivers, Phyllis Diller, Toady Fields, and Lily Tomlin. And then I was the new girl. So I had like 2 paragraphs at the bottom. And basically I said, they will not give me the Tonight Show. So with that Sunday, it turns out Helen Reddy is guest hosting like Tuesday, 2 days later. I don't know Helen Reddy. She calls, it turns out Toady Fields was one of her best friends. She calls Toady Fields, who I've never met, who has never seen me live, and she says to Toady, I'm hosting on Tuesday. Do you think I should put her on? And Toady says, I hear she's great. You put her on. And I got on the Tonight Show. My life changed forever. I bought a car the next day. I did.
One appearance like that.
One. I bought a car the next day, went on the road with Helen with the private jet and the, fishtails and the, Vegas and Tahoe and, everything. One show. And that was Helen Reddy, but it was Toady Fields who made it happen and never got to meet her, but I love her and I'm friends with her daughter now. So,
well,
I try to do that for women and men, but all the time. I mean, I always talk to Eliza Schlesinger, who I'm so in love with, and Maria Bamford, and there's so many great women now, Kira Sultanovich, and there's just great women working. So it's nice, and they're all so diverse now. It's so nice.
But you didn't have the chance to work with like Lily or Joan?
I've worked with Lily a lot. I mean, we do an awful lot of benefits together because, I have Tales of Joy, which is my nationwide nonprofit animal rescue. Lily works really hard for elephants around the globe, and we're always doing benefits for each other. So it's wonderful. I walked in one night. She was going to go on stage for a benefit for us, and there was like, I don't know, 6 empty bottles of wine or something. I said, because I can't drink, like I stopped drinking. I mean, I drink horribly, but no, I drink very well, actually. But like if I have a tour coming up, I stopped drinking about a month before because it really is a motor impairment for me. And I really need a tongue that works. And I know if I have a beer or something, I'm stumbling. So I stop way before. So anyone who drinks during, I'm amazed at. So I see 4 empty bottles of wine or 6, and I walk and I say, Lily, how can you? And she looks up, she goes, how can you not?
And she's still, I just ran into her last week, still touring 50 years after the Laugh-In.
She is one of the finest human beings on the face of the earth, will do anything for anyone. and just, she's on the right side of everything. And for me, if you want to be my friend, it's all about animals, and she was there before most of us. So I just reminded myself of another Ed Bluestone joke when I said she'd do anything with anyone. He used to say, I'm quadrisexual. I'll do anything with anyone for a quarter. See, I remember all the old acts of people that you wouldn't have never seen. So the book has the greatest material in the world, with all attributed to who it belongs to. So it's great.
And you've seen things that, of course, they only happened that one time, whether it was at the store, the Improv, just, catching Robin on a certain night.
Yeah, and
that's
these stories
never be captured again.
Ugh, I can I tell you how many times I saw Sam Kinison have his guys beat up people? I know the names. I have seen stories that no one knows about, but they're all great. Even when they're bad, they're great. So they're definitely worth getting out there. They're so excellent. And, the guys were incredible. And then women started coming up and they were amazing. So it's great,
But you now that the whole Me Too movement is out there, I'm sure that you had tons of those things.
Oh, you bet.
Yeah.
Michelle and I started so long ago, we were in the Me One movement. The Why Not Me movement.
Why not me?
Yeah, but the truth is, we started so long ago, there wasn't even a word for sexual harassment. We just called it going to work. And then, of course, Me Too got really interesting, and I thought, run away. I mean, how do you not get away from Harvey Weinstein? 300-pound guy's never run for a bus. He's not fast. He's got his pants down around his ankles. He's only taking limos. Run! Get away, Or Louis C.K. How do you not... If Louis C.K. called me into his office and said, would you watch me masturbate? I would say, dude, I don't even watch your show. I mean, you have to be tough. Well, here's what's important, though, because it's only by the grace of dog that it's only by the grace of dog that I don't didn't get either raped or molested, or because all of us when we're young, I mean, I get a lot of the Bill Cosby women, not the one who would happen 2-3 times. It's like, and wasn't two enough. But there are some women who go, and then the third time he put me to sleep again. I'm going, did you not get it? I mean, and I'm not blaming, but what I'm saying is we've all been in situations where if we had gotten molested, there's no way we could have defended ourselves to the police or anyone. For example, when I was hostessing the first year, and I was like 20, really out of Brooklyn, raised by the Taliban, no worldliness whatsoever, was, you could have just had me, just here, come in here, we're going to rape you. Oh, should I do that now? I didn't know anything. So we used to go to the brasserie once in a while if someone took us out, like Rodney, because, we didn't have money to pay for anything. So David Fry started coming in a lot. He was a very famous impressionist in those days. He was on Ed Sullivan all the time, The Tonight Show. He was a real star, and I was starstruck, and so were all the comics. And Danny Aiello, I had replaced Danny Aiello, the actor, as the doorman at the Improv. He had been there for a couple of years, then I took over. So Danny, I'm cute, and then David Fry says, oh, I'll take you out to the brasserie. Danny Aiello's coming. I said, oh, anybody else? He said, well, whoever wants to come. So it turns out it's David Fry, Danny Aiello, and a 20-year-old me, okay? We're eating at the brasserie. It's now 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm so happy. It's bright and festive, and there's no school tomorrow. So, and truly, the comics themselves, we would finish work or finish eating. We'd go up to their apartments at 4 o'clock in the morning and put on Firesign Theater or Richard Pryor, that first album with Mudbone. Forget it. I have never laughed that hard in my life. We'd all play albums till the sun came up, and then we go home. So Danny Aiello says, oh, Fry has some of the rarest comedy albums in the world. He wants to play them for you. Yay! Are you coming? Oh, yeah, I'll be there. Well, as long as you're there, too. It was the most natural thing in the world, okay? We go up in this dark, gorgeous building, right? And Dan, I said, you're coming, right? He said, Danny said, oh, yeah. As we go in, the door opens. Danny pushes me in the freaking door, pulls it closed, runs for the elevator. I'm in there, and Fry locks the door and starts chasing me. And I start running. He was a little guy, and I go, son of a bitch, Danny Aiello, how do you do that to a friend? And Fry is chasing me. And literally, I mean, it was horrible, but I did get out. I got out. He got me on his lap, and it's that thing of they're like humping like dogs that haven't been fixed. And I'm going, no, and I push him off. I get out, right? Now, if he had raped me, or what if I called the police? What are they going to say? You went up to his apartment voluntarily at 4 o'clock in the morning. Goodbye. Have a nice life. That's what happens to a lot of these women. Yes, we're starstruck. Yes, we believe in the goodness of people. And we think, hey, they're going to like give us a break or let us audition or teach us how to do this or read a scene with us or show us some videos. You know, I would have had no defense if I had not gotten out of there. And I think a lot of these women, what you're seeing is, yeah, I went up to Harvey Weinstein's hotel room. That's how moguls, they have the suite. You know, I didn't go up there to have sex. I went up there to read a scene or audition. It sounds sleazy to people not in the business, but a lot of it is done that way if someone's decent. And they take a suite for a week, you know, and then there's just the guys who are bad guys and, you know, and bad guys who even are bad to other guys. So we look guilty, but we are not guilty. We are not guilty. We're just naive.
Have you talked to, or did you talk to Danny Aiello after that happened? Or
Well, here's the thing, and that's what you learn, and especially when you're Medgar Evers. The thing is that I was going to see him every night of my life, you know, in those clubs for the rest of my life. And, you know, it's like, you know how like tough guys, they go, well, we're not going to fight over a woman, and they put it behind them, and they're still friends because women don't matter. Well, you know, I can't fight over, you know, someone trying to screw me. Literally, I have to be friends with Danny. We're sitting at the same table every night, and that was it, you know. And the truth is, I always liked him, and I still like him as a good guy, but I just don't like what he did that night. I think that was a real character flaw. But other than that, hey, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? You know, it was a great show, except for Act 3. It got a little weird in the audience, but
that's the amazing thing about the way your career started, because this was like literally the most dangerous place in the country, and in the middle of that, you're creating comedy. You're bringing sunshine.
And thank you for that. And what was adorable was I lived on West 12th and Hudson, you know, so I would take the bus up or the train, and I'd get out on, you know, Times Square. I used to run at full speed, full running speed, in 4-inch denim platforms in those days, to the Improv, which was 358 West 44th, right in the corner of 44th and 9th. There wasn't a light along the way. There was nothing but Dykes Lumber, which is still there. And because I ran, because you were going to get killed. But if you're running, they think, oh, someone's after her already, so we can't cut into somebody else's prey. So, and the thing that was so funny was I'd go by the Camelot coffee shop, which is still the hooker hangout on 45th and 8th, and they'd be there naked. I am telling you, less than pasties and a G-string. And who they want me in my full boots and a winter coat and gloves. Hey, baby. I go, you're like cats. You come to the one person in the street who doesn't want you. There's naked women, and oh, we want you. Ah! You know, and so the material was that. It was so real. It was so good.
But it was also, in my opinion, very optimistic. I always thought that your material was up. I never saw you kind of feeling sorry for yourself or running down the situations that you were in.
Thank you so much. Well, that's just from the childhood part of I'm once I get out of here, it's all good. So for me, I mean, I remember when I first got out and someone let me stay with her for a couple of weeks, and she just said, "Can you stop smiling?" I went, "I don't think I can." But you know, I mean, there's all kinds of comedy. There was no complaining. There was no, if I said something about men, I would do the counterpart for women. My fans have literally been 50-50 my whole life, 50-50 men and women. And I never did the female articles, you know, the LA Times, because I got to say the Tonight Show, you know, I wanted to get on. But, you know, Newsweek, Jay Leno gave my interview. Time, the women's article, Richard Lewis gave my interview. I wouldn't do it. The great thing was I wouldn't get pigeonholed because, it's like Cosby, sorry. I didn't even know he said this, and I found out that I had modeled the same thing, but he always said, I don't want to be a good black comedian. I want to be a great comedian, and he's black. And for me, it was like, I just want to be the best comedian. So when a bank president retires, they don't go, oh, but she's a woman comedian. You know, I do Microsoft and AT&T and all the corporate stuff, and it's not who's the best male comedian, it's who's the best comedian we can get for the money. And it's like, well, we can't afford Jay anymore. We can't afford Seinfeld. You know, they couldn't afford Gary Shandling anymore. Oh, Boosler, we can afford her. Okay. And I was right on that list of another great comedian. I never let them call me a woman. And my only sadness in that, and I hope the book will correct it, is there are a lot of people and a lot of books that say I didn't like women comics. And they misinterpreted what I was doing. I love from day one, and I always helped. And when I've been on the road the last 10 years, I only let women open for me, and the club owners don't want to do it. And I go, too bad. Well, 2 women, 3 women in a row. I go, every night of your life, you have 5 guys. Shut up already. I'm having the 3 women. Well, they're not good enough. It's because you don't put them on enough. They'll be fine. And that's what we do. And so, that was it for me. You have to help. And it was never that I didn't love women comics. It's that I didn't want to be grouped, because the more adjectives you put on what you do, the smaller your market becomes. And I wanted to earn a living and just do comedy. That's it. So,
and that's what you did when you got the opportunity. You did your comedy. You didn't kind of preach that thing, which I think some people would be surprised that this is your story. That there was the ceilings feel, because again, you always seemed so optimistic. And
people are coming in to forget their troubles at work.
Right.
I had one mission statement, and I live to this day. I just want people to leave feeling better than they came in. Yeah. That's it. Someone works all day. We know how hard life is, how hard work is. Who knows what happened to them that day? Do they need to be crapped on when they come into a show that they paid for and got dressed up and maybe got a babysitter or ate out or paid to park? Do they need something ugly and negative? You can still talk about the horrible shape we're in now with this country. And, by the way, scrotus, which I am credited in the Urban Dictionary, I own a word. Scrotus, which to me was not so-called ruler of the United States. To me, it was when the Pussy tapes came out and I went scrotum and POTUS, scrotus. So that's the only thing I can call him. But you can still do the material and not be make people like, oh, enough, we hate it. You can still make it funny with depth in it. Look, it was harder with Bush for me because too many people liked him and didn't understand. He destroyed the world. When he knocked down the Middle East, that was the end of the world. That's why we're still fighting. That was beyond. And it's the reason we were broke. All our money went into bales of millions that they played football with. One great book on all of that whole bullshit attacking the wrong country. You should read In the Green Zone. There's a million books on it. That's the book that will engage you, In the Green Zone. And so I played Texas constantly, and I would, I'd hit my Bush stuff. But some guys say I'm a political comic, and then they would say, doesn't Reagan's neck look like a turkey? I go, you're not a political comic. You're an idiot.
You did the White House Correspondents'
Yes,
Dinner.
but you don't attack the person. You must attack the policies that are bad for us. Yeah. And when you attack the facts, people can't get mad at you. So I'd always go after what Bush was doing, not Bush. He was a very likable killer. So, and just let me tell you this one thing. So Bill was there. So I'm in Texas one day and I'm doing, my act and I'm doing my Bush stuff, but I got a little strident because it was so ridiculous at this point. And finally, this guy stands up and he goes, who's coming with me? And he walks out and his table walks out and he's looking and nobody gets up. And I went, I'll go. So I felt bad for him, And so he walks out with 4 people, and 2 seconds later, the other 2 people come running back in and sit down again. He just made his wife leave. But so, that's how you have to do it. Okay, sorry.
Well, I was just saying from the Correspondents' Dinner, if you go back and watch that, you talked about sexual harassment stuff with Clinton, but you weren't roasting him.
Right.
But because it was on C-SPAN, we didn't get to see the close-up of him. I would love to see what he was doing during some of that material.
This was before Monica, you have to remember, because it was his first year in, and it's always the first 100 days. So it was May 1st, and it hadn't happened yet. So I didn't even know what was going to happen to him.
But he had all the Arkansas stories about him at that time when he was coming in.
There was tons.
Yeah.
But he loved it. If you see, there's a lot of footage of him just like red and laughing with his hands down here. And then, he liked me so much that I went back and did Ford's Theater again. They do Ford's Theater every year for the president. they take you to where Lincoln was shot and make you watch a show. Isn't that fun? Let's go to Auschwitz and watch comedy, you know. So you entertain Congress and him there. Now Monica had happened, and I went, I'm the only comedian on the show. I'm going to talk about working out at the gym. I'm going to leave this guy alone. He has had it. And afterwards, you're lined up, and he comes and shakes your hand, and he said, Elayne. And I said, Bill, I left you out of it. He said, and I really appreciate it. He had suffered enough.
You also worked for in front of the Queen, which is a very rare thing.
Not RuPaul, the Queen of England. That was awesome. That was fascinating. Yeah, command performance. And it was also her 50th wedding anniversary, I think. And it was just such...
40 years ago.
40 years ago when that happened.
I was in the late 80s. Late 80s. It's probably, yeah, she's married 100 years and she's 200 now. So I think it was her 89th wedding anniversary. It was so great. And, you know, it's like they're still so touchy. So I wore tails and not a dress. So that got, you know, in trouble. And then I didn't bow deep enough on stage. And I you know, struggled. I mean, I always pull it out because I will not leave until I pull it out. As soon as they just laugh to get you off, you know. But I just went, I'm not giving up. So, and they were 1,000,000 years old. The woman who lent Columbus the money was in the first row. So, you know, and I worked it out, and, you know, I took out the money and a pound note and looked up and went, well, you look kind of familiar. And I'm sure she went, oh, the money joke again. You know? But then at the end, you line up backstage where no one can see you, and you're all lined up, and they say, no, the Queen's going to come down, but she only stops very rarely, maybe 2 or 3 people. Do not look up. You must look down at your feet. Do not look up. Don't reach out. Don't say a word. She goes by you. That's it. You're done. If she stops, then you have to look up and, you know, let her say what she says, shake her hand, but don't look up if she doesn't stop. And I went, I'm not looking up. I know she's not stopping her because I had a hard show and so on. But I'm peeking, and she's talking to Janet Jackson, and she's talking to Tina Turner, and she's talking to Jerry Lewis. You know, we forgot to tell her nobody talks to Jerry Lewis. And you know, you don't know what she said. I mean, she saw Lance Burton. What a gorgeous act he did that night. He had doves fly up to her and I think pick her pocket or something. But anyway, so no, it was a gorgeous, gorgeous act. He's such a animal rescue. Las Vegas. Lance is the best. So she comes down, and I'm waiting for the feet to pass, and they stop. And I don't want to, I'm not doing this. And I go, oh, yeah, snub the Queen after you have a hard show. They'll hang you at the airport tomorrow. Snub the Queen. So there's the little feet. I go, you have to look up. And I look up, and she's exactly my height. She has literally completely see-through, turquoise blue eyes, completely see-through. They're twinkling like a fairy. And she takes my hand, and she has this little smirk, and she goes, very interesting. And the thing I couldn't believe, because it was a long time ago, I get an email from Lance. My phone is quacking. I apologize. It's a duck. It's my phone. It's quacking. Sorry. No, it's a duck.
It's the Queen.
It's the Queen. Are you talking about me again? Yeah, it's in that. Yeah, it'll stop by the time you get there. I know. It's a little quacking. It's a couple of months ago, Lance Burton emailed me. He goes, look, it's on YouTube. And there's the Queen walking down, and they announce it. And go, and Lance Burton and comedian Elayne Boolser, who flew in from the United States. And there's the Queen. You can't see what she's saying, but I thought that is the coolest thing ever. I have that. So that was kind of fun. Yeah.
I think that's the amazing thing when you start to go through these stories, that this is a life, a rare life that anyone gets to have lived.
I don't know if it's, well, okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
I mean, when you really look, the White House, the Queen, the Tonight Show, I mean, the whole thing. If somebody would have told you this when you were at the Improv, as the hostess, you would have said unbelievable.
Well, if I had only gotten as far as the hostess and my own 1 square foot apartment, I would have been successful, because all I cared about was freedom and safety. Yeah. So, you know, anything else, just the fact that I earned a living my whole life. You know, I live low. My car was a 1984 Chevy Camaro until 1991 and until 2001. So that was it. 17 years. I still have it. And then I have a car from 2001. I don't, you know, I have nothing to fall back on. This is it. And this guy drinks, so,
sure.
You know.
Yeah.
Do you know how we met? We met at the Clinton's first inauguration. Bill was managing Crosby, Stills and Nash at the time, and I was hosting the night before. I hosted because I had done so much work on the campaign. He let me host the Constitution Hall Gala the night before the inauguration. So I was hosting a 4-hour show at Constitution Hall in Washington. Melissa Etheridge is on the bill. Crosby, Nash were on the bill. It was just an awesome show, 4 hours, and he came with them, and I was hosting, and I had migraines for 50 years beyond, but I mean throwing up migraines and timing. Oh, thank you, and please welcome right on stage. As we always say about the audience, if they only knew. So, lots of throwing up and migraines. And anyway, I had a migraine that night, and nobody could go out and get Excedrin for me. And so it was getting so bad, I was blind. And I made my way downstairs after they all ate, and I left Melissa Etheridge on stage to go downstairs and find a piece of bread or something. And I see this guy just completely nobody there. He's at a table in the middle with a bottle of wine, a steel gray ponytail down to his waist, and I went, "Who's that?" Right into it back. I threw up. And then I ran back up to take Melissa off stage, and that was it. And then the next day I had sent away for my little inauguration tickets, and I'm all dressed up walking to the bus stop to go to the inauguration. I mean, I live very low because I want to be in public all the time to get, talk to people. And this limo pulls up and the window goes down, and it's Graham Nash and Susan and Bill, and he goes, "Elayne, where are you going?" And I said, "To the bus stop." He went, "Get in the car." So that happened.
And you're still friends with Graham now? Or?
Yes. He was our best man, and Susan was in the wedding party. He's a great guy.
He stops by here all the time, and he's just the most amazing singer, songwriter, and then just person.
Yeah, he is. He's a great fundraiser for many issues, and very, very good guy. Bill loved him. Yeah, he's great.
And you, and this, like you said, your charity has become so...
we have time for it?
Yeah,
Quick.
enough, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you need a reason to get up in the morning. It's not work, even if work is great and interesting. So I always wanted to do rescue, and Tales of Joy, TAILS of joy.net. We're nationwide and now beyond. We've been bringing about 4 3-legged dogs from Lebanon every 2 months because I teamed up with a flight attendant, so we pay for that. Puerto Rico, well, that's us. But Israel, cats, everywhere. We're just nationwide, all animals, farm animals, wildlife, sea life, primates in Cameroon, elephants with Lily, Wildlife SOS. We just bought 5 sewing machines for a tribe there who was dancing the bears, but it's electricity. So Wildlife India said, if we give you a way to make a living, can we take the bears away for a sanctuary? And they said, well, how are we going to make a living? We got them sewing machines. They're selling like the stuff's gorgeous. So it's not just animals, it's people, it's everything. And we just earmarked, because the box set is pre-sale on Amazon right now.
Yeah.
We took $25,000 of Tales of Joy, earmarked it for anyone who buys the box set now, which is 5 hours of really relevant comedy. Nothing's changed, unfortunately. Yeah. So you get 5 hours of comedy. The pre-sale order price is $27.83, and we donate $25 back to the rescue organization of your choice. So you're getting 5 hours of comedy for under $3, and you get to make a donation to any rescue you want. And for the first 1,000 buyers, that's what we're doing.
That's pretty amazing. That's really great. And it's Elayne Boolser, Timeless. It's available on Amazon.com. You did this with Comedy Dynamics, which is a really cool,
excellent company. Yeah.
I love this. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Next time, come back and I'll try to get a story or 2 out of you. Okay? I'll have that. Elayne Boolser, everybody. She's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Thank you so much.